Mr. President, Mr. Perino, members of the board, Superintendent Del Moro, congratulations. It's going to be a great honor working with you. Ms. Creedon. Tonight, I'm going to present the budget overview, what we've been working on for the past, essentially you work on it over a whole year based on what you've learned about revenues and expenditures, and when you wait for the legislators to finalize their budget, and then you can actually come to some realization of what you're actually going to put forward. So I just want to emphasize this is our proposed budget. Tonight is the public input. If there's any questions or concerns about the budget process or proposals, they can come forward. At the next meeting, the board will need to adopt the budget. So here's our summary of what we're looking at for this year. You'll see some of the most important things up here for us right now. We do have a line for the SROs in there. We've allocated $700,000 at this point for that program. That's still a little tentative. We're still waiting for the final proposal, which we'll have tomorrow, and hopefully that'll be under our budget numbers. As we look at the administrative, we're up a little over 8.5%, mostly contractual. Our program, which consists of all of our instruction programs, our athletics, things of that nature, up over a little bit, 5.3%. Our capital, you'll see that's a big jump for us, but what we're doing in the budget this year, we actually have some capital projects using our fund balance to pay for those capital projects, so you're seeing the money allocated in the capital line for that. Our benefits, you'll see a reduction there, and that is from last year. We were very aggressive about having our own self-funded health insurance plan. Last year we saved $3 million by going self-funded, and then we're seeing another savings this year of over $1.1 million. And primarily what we've been waiting for is the legislation, the Assembly and the Senate to pass legislation for us to have a $5 million reserve. At this moment, the Assembly has passed that bill, and it's at the Senate going through different houses, different stages of the process, and hopefully that'll be approved within a month or so. So that's kind of good news for us. That actually helps us in our budget lines once we have that $5 million reserve for health care. Again, I'll talk about the SROs. So right now we've allocated inside the budget $700,000. That would be for 7 SROs, one at each building, and then depending on the amount of days that we would need them, that's what we've allocated the budget for. Some of those things are still yet to be determined about the SROs, and based on some more conversations that we'll have tomorrow. We've met with the town of Wallkill. They gave us their proposal, and then we had a preliminary conversation with Middletown, City of Middletown, and that's what we've come up with this estimate for the year for next year. So overall, our total proposed budget summary is 5.82% increase over last year. You see a big number, primarily because I'll go back to where we have a capital projects embedded inside the budget. Okay, and when I go into a couple of next slides, here's some of the proposed projects that we have inside the budget. We talked about these at the last meeting. One is to resurface the track. That's at $700,000. Replace the video board at $500,000. Replace the turf field at $775,000. And to re-renovate the library and entranceway into the high school at $2.2 million. So this is all money that we're using it from our fund balance. So there's actually zero cost to the property owners, and this will be inside of our budget. So if we look at our proposed budget overview, our expenditures must equal our revenues. So for this year, we're looking at $189,966,196 budget. Okay, so the budget increase from year to year is 5.5%. Our tax levy increase will be 1.87%. Our tax cap levy will be $75,878,805. And our tax levy increase will be $1,395,057. So we did a very good job. Our actual tax cap was over 2.6%. I'll show you in the next slide how we were able to use some reserves and some fund balance to help us offset the tax levy. On this slide, we have the budget request, additional budget requests. We had 3 additional bus stops, or 3 additional buses for our multiple tiering busing system to help increase the overcrowding of buses and to have more efficient bus routes. A math K-12 coordinator, a school psychologist at the high school, 1.5 FTE physical education teachers, and this is all due to increased enrollment in stations that the students can actually participate in at the high school. A technology teacher, that would be for like Project Lead the Way, engineering, those types of courses downstairs, Cisco. Looking at 2 special education teachers in the high school, 1 music teacher at the high school, and we've actually added, or looking to add, for student engagement opportunities clubs at the elementary and middle school levels. We keep emphasizing the word increased enrollment. So what we're dealing with now, after our demographer came in, we're looking at, over the next 3 or 4 years, the high school is going to be over 2,400 to 2,500 students. So you're going to see, right now it's under 2,200, so you're going to see a big enrollment increase over the next couple of years at the high school. For the non-instructional side, looking at some more security aids, this is 3 FTEs, but it could be 6 part-time FTEs. Okay, an additional 0.5 clerical at the high school, additional 0.5 clerical in technology, some part-time cleaners to help with increased meal services throughout the day, and 1 utility tradesman to help. We just need some more skilled staff in the district with all the facilities. So some of the things that we've done, as I said before, we were able to have a health benefit savings of over $1.2 million. We're using unappropriated fund balance, $5,799,227. Using our workers' comp reserve at $500,000 and our employee retirement reserve at $500,000. So using this fund balance and these reserves, we're able to offset our tax levy and have it under 2% at 1.87%. Some things to remember moving forward. Our budget adoption is April 19th. The board will vote to adopt the budget. We'll have a budget hearing on May 3rd, and then the budget vote Tuesday, May 15th. And then please contact our district clerk, 326-1196, if you need a place to vote. If you move residencies, you may vote in a different place. It's important to make sure you have the right paperwork so you can vote in the right facility. And that's all I have. Does anybody questions or concerns? Go ahead. Pastor. Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, you want to go back up on the stage? Or you want to do it here? Yeah, whatever you want to do. Okay. Okay.
Right now, if I did it, I'd probably break my neck and get about halfway. It would kill me. The nursing staff. Pulling hamstring going up the stairs.
Why don't we go around the table if there are any questions on the budget. I must say, in looking at this budget, the lowest tax levy that I ever remember in all the years I've been on the board, and more added to the budget without any cuts, and adding staff, adding the improvements to the district into it. And a big item, of course, the SROs. And no student in any grade is worth more than another. And this is why we intend to put an SRO in each of our buildings as another level of security. So I'm going to go around now, and why don't we start with, let's start with Mr. Gomez. Who's got the timer? Who's timing here tonight? Go ahead, Mr. Gomez.
Thank you, Mr. President. Okay, I see they're going to time me. Okay. First, I'm very humble, honored, and proud to be part of a school board that recognizes the importance of our students' safety. When I ran for the school board, one of the issues that was dear to my heart as a parent was making sure that when it comes to budgets, that school safety be a priority, not just at the school board level, but also at the state level, federal level. I'm very happy that our school district has moved forward in that direction, establishing funding for the SROs. That's one of many steps, I think, that need to be taken to ensure that school safety is a specialty. Because I think at the end, if our children are not safe, if our school districts are not safe, nothing else matters. And by taking the steps, I think we're all winners. And I hope that the legislature, as well as the Congress, will act, making sure that the resources will always be there for this, a much-needed priority here and across our country. So I want to express my appreciation for the leadership of Dr. Del Moro, and first congratulate Dr. Del Moro as being the captain of this wonderful ship, and for his leadership on this matter, and President Perino, who's been very vocal with it. Also, with respect to the overall budget, yes, the principal expenditures must equal revenue. I think it's based on an underlying principle of government living within its means. And we do that by making sure that money is spent efficiently. And the fact that we have a budget that promotes, number one, in academic excellence and infrastructure, as well as already said, school safety, shows that we have, I think, strong vision and commitment to give the best to our children and to use in a very wise manner our taxpayer money without creating any further burden. So I want to commend our district for that. And let me just say, I think, congratulate Mr. Tuttle, and I'm sure down the road in the future, there will be a future president who could use his expertise as a budget negotiator, because he does a great job for our children in our school district.
I'm sorry, thank you, Mr. Gomez. As Mr. Tuttle indicated, work starts on the budget not 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. It starts in October, really. He starts working on this budget. So good job again, Mr. Tuttle. Thank you again, Mr. Gomez. Mrs. Tobiasen, go ahead.
I just want to say I've sat on this board for, I guess it's 13 years, and I can't be prouder of the decisions that have been made this evening, beginning with my congratulations to Mr. Del Moro. And when I look at the budget, I don't know how you did it, Mike, but I am so proud to see that we came in below 2%, and with all of the programs that we have for our students, everyone has done a marvelous job. And if anyone has any concerns, I would find it difficult. Yes, John, I would find it difficult, because John knows I'm pretty conservative when it comes to the board and with spending and that. So excellent, excellent job. I can't thank you enough. And Mike, your presentation was right on. So thank you.
See, again, it goes back, we discussed fund balance at a couple meetings ago. If you didn't have, and you don't build an unappropriated fund balance, an appropriated one, you're going to be in trouble. And there were schools in the news that are in trouble locally because they run out of money. So this is it. And we don't want to be in that position, because then you have to start cutting staff and you have to start cutting programs, very valuable programs. So that's good. Why don't we start with we'll go around at the, Vince, go ahead.
I don't have any questions. We've covered this at length over the last month or so. But, this budget didn't just happen this year. This is the culmination of 14 years of strategic planning, knowing what's important and where to go with it. And as someone said, this process didn't just start a couple of months ago or a couple of weeks ago. It's ongoing. It's a yearly kind of thing. And it's amazing what you've done, Mr. Tuttle, and everyone else who's worked on this budget. But one thing I want to make, in my opinion, and I want to make this clear, I hope people don't get the impression that we desperately need an SRO in our buildings to make our buildings safe. Our buildings are incredibly safe. The program and the planning, what have you, is constant. It never stops. We have security aides working in our buildings. The plans and what have you are totally ongoing. You can't talk a lot about what is planned for obvious reasons. It has to be kept within the district. So the SRO is, in my opinion, is just one more layer on top of an already very sound program. Your children are safe. When they come to our school, your children are safe. So having the one police officer in each building, what I see, more so maybe than the policeman in the building, is the police car outside. So whoever drives by, you see that there. So you know there's a presence in our building, in all of our buildings. Hopefully the SRO, these officers are very well trained. They don't just come in from the police department. They have to do a week's intensive training on how to be a school resource officer. Not everybody qualifies. You have to have the right disposition, the right demeanor to be in this position. And I believe the way it looks like our contract with the municipalities, these are going to be relatively young officers, which I think is a plus. Hopefully they'll be able to relate with our students. I worked at BOCES for 33 years, and for 2 years we had an SRO from Goshen, and he was really an important part of our program. He got to know the kids, they trusted him, they confided in him, and you can stop problems before they actually start. So I fully support the SRO program, but again, you have to know, you should know that our buildings are safe, that when your children walk through the door, they're in a safe environment. Thank you.
Well said, Mr. Crescenzo. Ms. Blumenauer.
So much to think about this time of year. Usually, at this point, this time of year, I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, we've got to go out and try to pass this budget, and where are we going to come in to make it reasonable and palatable and acceptable to the community. And we look to our administrators to put that package together and be able to make it comprehensive and easily understood for anyone who needs to look at it. Even though I've been sitting here, this is my 6th budget season, we have questions. There's someone who's sitting here for the first year looking at it and saying, okay, and trying to dissect what everything means and where the money goes and what is administrative and what is capital. And it's a huge project that we start early. We start those conversations, and we did, and I echo my fellow board members in their comments. This year, the state came through for us. Usually this time of year, I'm yelling about the fact that the state didn't come through for us. So I wanted to just take a moment to say thank you, because obviously, I feel like if the state is going to invest in what we're doing at that level, it's almost a little bit of validation that we're doing a good job and putting good money after good money. And it's our job to make sure that that money is spent wisely. So I just wanted to say that in reference to the state budget. SROs, I think that there isn't one person sitting here at this table that would have said no to bringing SROs into our buildings at any point in the past couple of years. From the point where we lost them, because we didn't have we really just did not have the money, and we would have had to start cutting programs and moving things around, and it would have been at great loss in order to put this together. This particular year, it's an ability, but it's only one piece of the puzzle to making sure that our schools are safe. And as Mr. Crescenzo just said, our buildings are safe because over the past few years, we've beefed up the security in our buildings. We've been ongoing, making sure that we're keeping up with what the market is bearing, unfortunately. If somebody wants to get into a building, if somebody wants to do damage, you can be sure they're going to do damage, and we've all been witness to that the past couple of months, heartbreakingly, unfortunately. I happen to know personally people who have a student that was in the Parkland school at the time of the shooting, and it really brings it home. So I think that, like I said, I just feel that this is only one part. The SROs, the security of our buildings, the safety, the safety of the plant. But we also need to be looking, and I think that we are in this budget, looking at the community schools as a big part, and taking advantage of the community schools and bringing in support for our students who are needing support for students who need that, emotional support, making sure that we're seeing it from all ends, not just the intruder, but how to keep our student body safe from within is just as important. And I believe that we do a good job. We're doing a good job of making sure that that happens. Thank you to our team, of course. Congratulations, Mr. Del Moro. Wish you the best of luck. And let's just keep going from strength to strength. Middletown's a great place to be, great place to live. I love it here. I raised my children here, and hope to continue and be a strong voice on this board. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Mrs. Ux.
So, yes, this is my first year, my first budget. I would like to first say thank you, Mr. Damaro, for stepping in, and you started out with doing a wonderful job. It started was a whirlwind, your first meeting, and you have done a wonderful job. I know we're going to see you take off and do a wonderful job. I just know that this is the right move. Thank you so much. And as far as our budget, I do agree. Being the first year, there's a lot of questions in my mind. I do have to say, Mr. Tuttle, as in watching, I know that you have done a really good job in making sure that each time that we sit down, giving us all the answers and making sure that you answer all of our questions. That is not my question in any form or manner. I do say that as far as SROs come and go, my biggest thing here is making sure that I don't want to put up anything that is just going to be fleeting. I don't want to sit here and say that we're going to put this here and that this is only going to be for a year or 2 years. I want to make sure that just like anything that we've done that is here to stay, the last time we did this, it wasn't able to stay. So that is my biggest concern, is that as we move forward with this, that just like all of our other programs, we're able to make sure that we are able to put this in and that we're not going to lose it in any way, shape, or form. And so I guess that's where when we sit down with, and you come back, with all the other information and we look over everything, that's going to be my biggest concern moving forward. I just don't want to, everything else I'm really happy with.
Thank you, Mr. Suggs, for those comments. Bishop Williams?
My 5 years on this board, I have to be honest, that my first year coming in, and I've said this many times before, is that I was like a deer caught in headlights, and I was completely overwhelmed. I'm grateful to the board members back then, like Mr. Will Geiger and Mr. Warren and Mr. Estrada, who kind of helped me through that process. And I'll say this with this budget, for our first year board members, you got it good. You got it real good. The first couple of years on this board, it was tough. It was tough trying to first of all, trying to figure it out. But it was even tougher to have to make decisions on what we had to figure out, especially when you're getting such crazy input from different individuals, and then, of course, the input of the community. And what I found to be one of the hardest things to do, but it was necessary to do, was to understand that for every decision you make, there's going to be somebody that likes it, and there's going to be somebody that doesn't like it. And that hasn't changed. That hasn't changed. There's still going to be somebody that will not like this budget. But I have to say that we are in such a good place right now as it relates to this budget. We're a place that we've never been. And I wasn't just a Johnny-come-lately on the board. I watched the board for a number of years prior. And there was many times before I was on this board, I was sitting out, the only one sitting out in the audience. And they would look at me and they say, is there anybody in the public that wants to speak? And everyone would look at me. I'd be like, what? But I'm so grateful that we are able to do this. The state did step up for us, as Mrs. Blumenau said, but that didn't come without hard work. We've had individuals who have sat at this table, and even to go back to say, we would tease him so much, but it was truth. But we would always say, I would always say, I'm going to get Dr. Eastwood a soapbox to stand on. But he was passionate about being very vocal about fair funding. Mr. Warren is sitting out in the audience, our former board member, former board president, who worked diligently and worked hard for fair funding for our district. And so what we're seeing and experiencing now, I'm finding, and this is for the public, what we're seeing and experiencing now is the hard work of individuals that came before us and helped to build this foundation. I'm looking at this, and just to make clarification for anybody who wonders, because they look at increases and have a question about increases, but you've got to understand that everything gets more expensive. This winter, I've had the most expensive heating bill I've ever gotten from Orange and Rockland this winter, I've ever had. I sat back and I said, my goodness, I'm going to have to sell one of my children. I don't know which one. It ain't going to be the girl. But yeah, I know. And then we look at it. There are within the administrative increases. They're contractual. They're things that we can't escape because they're contractual. Programming. We're moving forward in our programming. We're not staying stagnant. I said something a little bit earlier. Is one thing to maintain, but to maintain means that sometimes you're stagnant. Not all the time, but for the most part, when I hear the word maintain, it means that we're staying at an even pace. But we haven't been mandated to stay still. We've been mandated to progress and to move forward, and that's the thing that even we as a board collectively said earlier this year over this next 5-year plan. And so that's what you're seeing in the programming and the capital, in which there is no stress at all to fulfill these capital projects to the public. And there is also the answer of the fund balance question that people have tried to pose. We are able to do the things that's necessary to keep this district moving forward, to keep the education that our children so greatly deserve. And now we're here dealing with the SRO issue. I look at this in two ways. When we were going through our swatting issues, I stood as a parent, even when other parents were coming in and had what they had to say. I stood as a parent during that time and said that as a parent with 3 children who are in 3 different buildings at the time, I had the utmost confidence in our staff and the processes that we were using in order to keep our children safe. And we didn't stop there. We continued to improve on it. And I still have that same degree of confidence with or without SROs. However, I think that it's a wonderful thing to have the SROs come in. We had our reasoning for not having it the last couple of years. It was legitimate reasons. It was legitimate reasons, budget-wise, and I'm gonna be honest. No one likes to. Sometimes people don't like to address the elephant that's in the room. I'll be honest. It was also relationship reasons as to why certain things didn't come. I think sometimes you can be a bull in a china shop and break everything up, and I think that sometimes the way that things were handled in the process of that, sometimes it caused some issues with us having the trust issues for everybody that was presenting the whole SRO debate. But I do believe that this move that we're making is a great move. We're able to fold it into our budget, also with the idea of knowing that as the state and the federal are moving forward to try to find ways to alleviate that aspect of our expenses in the budget for us. So I think it's here for a long time to say. And I'll add this. I think this is also a way of finding a way to heal some of the mend some of the broken bridges and the misconceptions and the problems that we've experienced over the last couple of years. Nothing changes unless you confront it, and we're confronting the issue. We want the children, we want the families, we want the parents to all feel at ease and comfortable with knowing that their children are protected and they are cared about. And sometimes that takes for us as adults to put aside issues with one another in order to recognize that it's not about us at the end of the day. It's about the kids. And so I'm looking at the budget, and I've watched every step of it. I've looked at all the different pieces of it. Mike has done such a great job at keeping us informed and showing us all the pieces and laying it out for us, meeting after meeting. And so thank you, sir, for doing such a great job. Again, like I said, there's going to be those that will not be happy, but I tend to believe that for the most part, there's more that's for us than that are against us. And I will not address naysayers directly. I will continue to encourage the positive, encourage the betterment and the greater good. So we're going into this. We've got to adopt this in our next meeting. And I think that, and I'll say this and I'm done. I think that the evidence of the fact that we are doing what we're supposed to do in doing our due diligence is in the fact that right now there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I don't know, 7, 8 people sitting out there looking at us. And we're here in this big auditorium. And I think that's evidence that we're doing our due diligence. I would expect that if there was a problem, we were dealing with this issue 5 years ago, 4 years ago, it was a packed house in here, and everybody had something to say. But we're doing we're doing what's right, and there's somebody out there that knows that we're trying and striving. Is everything perfect? No, everything's not perfect, but we are adjusting, we're moving, and we're pressing forward. And so, congratulations to our administration. I'm sure there'll be more things that will come up and things that we have to deal with, but you've done such a good job. So thank you, and let's make this happen.
You know, there's always people, thank you, Bishop Williams, there's always people not satisfied for one reason or another. The article on fund balance that appeared a couple of weeks ago, one of the board members said somebody told them that's BS. Well, if it's BS, I can't do anything about it. I mean, you see the results of it in the conservative investing over the years, and this is a result when you do that. You have money to put into the budget to lower the tax levy. You use some of your unappropriated fund balance, and we've used $5.2 million of it this year, getting down to 5.7, getting down to brass tacks. All right, I don't have that in front of me. 5.8. But 5.8, okay, 5.8. So that's a great job there. You know, there's a district, and I hope they're successful, voting this evening. And there were ads in the paper. Together we can fix overcrowded schools, outdated classrooms, failing heating and cooling systems, flooded offices and gymnasiums, unsafe and unsuitable athletic facilities, and much more. You don't want to get in that position ever again. You want to be preventative. You want to make constant and continuous improvements to our buildings, and we're doing that in this budget through the normal budgetary process. On the other hand, you don't want to run down your fund balance. It's like money in the bank. I mean, maybe some people live without money in the bank. I try not to, not much, but I try to keep a reserve, and that's what the reserve is for. We've used the reserves in the past, for example, when a boiler goes out in the middle of the year, or a hot water heater. Now, in a school, the boilers and hot water heaters aren't $1,000. They're a lot of money, many, many thousands of dollars. But you have to have this. If you don't do this, and you have to go out and borrow in the market, it's very, very expensive. We have a excellent Moody's rating. I think it's what, Mike? AAB? Moody's rating, what is that? AA3, okay. And that determines what you have to pay when you have to go out and bond. So, good job again. Let's keep up the good work, and let's keep this district moving forward, because if you don't like this budget, I guarantee you're not going to like any. So, that we'll be voting on this the 19th. And just a word, Bishop Williams mentioned Dr. Eastwood, I believe. You know, Dr. Eastwood has been named by the Commissioner of Education, Commissioner Elia, a distinguished educator for the Rochester School District, which means he's going to be developing plans to improve that district. And if you look at the Rochester district now, this is how we were 14 years ago. Low graduation rates, not making much progress in the ENL and ELL programs. One of the only 5 districts in the state with 20% or more of the schools have been placed in receivership. On and on. Again, I never want to go back to this. Never, ever, even if I'm not on the board. And the way not to go back to this, we've done it, we've seen it tonight, with a very conservative and a very good budget, and an increase in our programs, and a low tax levy. So that's all I have to say, and thank you, and we'll now go on. The next second opportunity to address the board, and this opportunity is designated as public's budget input. So anybody like to go to the mic and address the board on the budget input? Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Marianne Jewell. I have a sophomore here at the high school who has, I have to say, been extremely successful in part to the special education department. But that's not why I'm here. I have a question regarding the school resource officers, and that is that the budget plans for 5, and I guess that would allocate 1 per building.
The budget plans for 7.
Oh, for 7. So how many would that be here at the high school?
1.
So it's 1 in every building. Sorry, I had the numbers wrong. So my question is, in a building that's smaller, say Carter Elementary, how are we kind of distributing that ratio? So how are they going to be as effective in a building with 2,200 kids as opposed to a building that, say, may 500 kids? So that's one of my questions. And I think that's it.
Thank you. Do you want to answer that, Mike, or do you want me to answer it, or Mr. Del Moro, do you want to answer that? I can answer it, but go ahead.
You go ahead, and then I'll answer. Go ahead.
You know, Marianne, as I say, it's a start. No school is more important than another school. You don't know what's going to happen today if some idiot takes it into their head to create an incident in a building. I understand 100% what you're saying, but also we have more security personnel in the high school than we do, for example, proportionally than we do for example, Truman Moon or one of our smaller buildings. So again, as Bishop Williams said, everything's not perfect, but we certainly we're certainly making a large improvement here. And you know, the SROs are not only to prevent or attempt to prevent incidents, but they build relationships with the staff. I mean, I've seen this many, many times with our DARE program. For example, Officer Beebe this year, the kids love working with her in the elementary grades. But I'm glad you raised the point. I'll let Mr. Del Moro.
Just to add on to what Ms. Perino said, that certainly that's an obvious question about the different enrollments in the buildings. And again, this is a start. But we also have to remember in the building of this size, there is quite a number of security aides. And as you also saw in the budget proposal this evening, there will be 3 additional full-time security aides added to this building, which could then also be equalized out to 6 additional part-time if we choose to do that, so we have overlapping coverage. In addition to the 1 resource per building that is in this proposal at this time, in speaking both with Chief Iwanshu and Chief Hartman and the City of Middletown and the Town of Waukegan, in addition to the actual police officer and ESRO program assigned to the building, they have assured us that they will provide additional support by having patrol cars at the arrival and dismissal of students at time, so that it's just not only the resource officer here and no one else will be supporting the schools. In addition, which has been started for the last 2 or 3 weeks now, maybe a little longer, in our positive relationships with both of those law enforcement agencies, the police officer walking in now, meeting with kids, sitting down in the cafeteria, in the hallways now, that's not going away. So those were vital questions that we asked each of the representatives from the two municipality law enforcement agencies, and they were readily to respond to the fact that they're going to maintain that. It's very helpful to building relationships. It helps them working in the community outside school hours with the students to get to know them, as Mr. Perino and other board members have mentioned. So please understand that on the surface that may not look equitable. I understand the question, but I can assure you that, as Mr. Cosenzo said very aptly so, that's just a piece of our total program, and I just explained some of those issues regarding actual personnel in addition to the school resource officer. We also have over 700 cameras. We've hardened our entrances and exits and so on and so forth. But as far as personnel, we do have those additional supports that have been assured to us.
Can I add something to that? We deal with two municipalities, town of Walk Hill and Middletown. So Willie Carter, Monhagen, and Maple Hill would be covered by the town of Walk Hill. So it wouldn't be easy to move SROs around like two in one building for whatever. So what we have now, I guess, I hope we answered your question, is the best of all worlds that we could possibly do at this time.
I wasn't necessarily looking to have an SRO, say, moved from, say, Carter on a
Right.
Tuesday to the high school. I was thinking more along ratio size, thinking that a building of this size with 2,200 kids requires a little more security. I guess that's not really the term. Every building requires the same amount of security, but more manpower than that of a smaller building.
Did we answer your question, though? Because of the increased security aids and what have you?
Absolutely.
Oh, good.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Mr. President,
You're welcome.
Mr. Perino, one brief comment, and yeah, in response also. Right now there is, I believe, and Mr. Tuttle will clarify if I'm wrong, outside the budget that money that's being proposed or allocated from the school district as well as from the local municipalities, there is pending legislation at the state level, supported, I believe, by both the Democratic leadership in the Assembly, the Republican leadership in the state Senate, and should that come to fruition, and I think there's enough momentum for bipartisan legislation, those will be additional funds, and the goal, I think, which was outlined by the Sheriff Carl Du Bois for Orange County, is to make it permanent funding. Should that come to fruition, there'll be additional resources come into a district to address the concern laid out by the parent from the high school. And in other words, we are looking forward for the state legislature, in the words of Winston Churchill, to give us the tools so we can finish the job.
Great. And I'm sure your Fair Funding Committee is right on that.
Yes, Fair Funding Committee is addressing the issue of unfunded mandates, as well as we were looking at the legislative breakdown as far as the budget, and we're planning down the road for the future to see if we could schedule meetings with both Assemblywoman Gunter and State Senator Bonasek to address our concerns concerning fair funding.
Dr. Johnson.
My name is still Paul Johnson. Thank you very much. A couple of things with the points that were raised with respect to Vince. I think it's a point well taken. In my day job, I talk to lots of people. I've never really run into any parent who did not feel their children were safe, so I think it's a point well taken. As you've alluded, there are lots of things in place that we're not supposed to know about for obvious reasons. And I think all of the security protocols and policies that you have in place, including the photo ID at registration, are you're a little bit ahead of the curve on that. With respect to, as you mentioned, you do have jurisdictional issues because some of your schools are one municipality, more in the other. And those are some of the details that would need to be worked out. With respect to Bishop's remarks, yeah, there's an elephant in the room, but I think it left the room. I think our teams are more compatible. And not only at the local level are we more compatible, but I think our culture is ready to accept what we think we need to do. 10 years ago, that may not have been so easy, but unfortunately, conditions have changed, and it is another layer of protection that I think most people are comfortable with. With respect to Superintendent Del Maro's remarks, I think that's what Chief was referring to. We're really ready to talk about a complement of support issues, not just the one person there from 8 a.m. to 3:12 p.m. And lastly, with respect to the longevity issue of the program, the mayor has spoken to this in trying to get some legislation put in place to put the SRO spending outside of the budget cap. As you said, a couple of years ago, you really couldn't see the money to do that. $701,000, $999.24 is a lot of things. And what if you do find an issue down the road where you can't really allocate that money for that? And if we could have the, both at the municipal level and the school level, if that spending for SROs could be allocated outside the budget, so you could still have your 1.87% and still maintain the program, I think we're having conversations both with John and Aileen along those lines. And once again, the time may be right to move all of these initiatives forward. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. Mr. Warren.
Good evening. I got to say I'm going to reiterate some of the things that were already discussed, but I'm happy to see you, and by the way, congratulations, Mr. Del
Thank you,
Moro.
Ms. Warren. Thank you.
I'm happy to see you in a position to be able to discuss SROs in a financial position, I should say. I worry that, and it was already discussed, that the zeitgeist changes and the winds shift and the priorities placed today by society, move. It's all about money. We know that. I would love to see this, that the feds or the state legislature come up and allocate the funds and outside of your budget, which is something that Dr. Johnson just mentioned as well, because we know we used to have SROs here years ago, but then the budget conditions changed. We know this is all cyclical, and shifting ebbs and flows and tides of traumas in the world. Something else could replace what we're all experiencing today, and I worry that goes away and there isn't anything in place that can fix this, fix the financing end of things. I'm hopeful that doesn't change, because most of you have already, in the past years, have experienced the budget cycles that weren't so fortuitous for the district. And you had this house packed with people who were concerned over various programs at the same time. So I'm happy to see you guys in the position you're in. And I understand, and Mrs. Jewell left, but we're not able to talk about, you're not able to talk about things that are in place. Some of them I know of because I was on the board when we were doing and hardening the buildings and the security. Our buildings are a lot safer than a lot of other districts just in this area. And maybe some of you have been in those other districts' buildings like I was in the past, and you see things that are in place there that it's different than what we have. I would hope that maybe parents like Mrs. Jewell, if they went to another district and saw how things are different, they might realize how much safer it is here. Not to disparage other districts. All districts have funding issues, and they have to allocate it where they can. But that money spent a few years ago, the $1.5 million, I think it was, where district-wide all the buildings and the exteriors were hardened, great stuff, and I think that gets lost sometimes. People get complacent and they see what's here, but they don't see what's elsewhere. So I want to thank you all for all the hard work, Mr. Tuttle, Mrs. Creedon, all the board members, all the administrators throughout the district, and, you know, all staff, teachers, everybody who had input. Mr. Coates, how are you? And for all your due diligence with, you know, putting together a budget that the community can be happy with. And you don't see them here, but it's because they're happy. If they weren't, this place would be packed. So be happy, be pleased with the fact that you've got an empty house. So thank you all.
Let's not
Thank you,
look at
Mr.
doors in the
Warren, and
mouth.
thank you for your service to the district over the years.
Thank you. Just to add, to that, and sometimes I remember my father saying, you shouldn't blow your horn very well, have others recognize. But I think I would be remiss if I didn't mention that yesterday, Mr. Tuttle, Mr. Creed, and I were at a county-wide safety meeting with all law enforcement agencies in the county, as well as superintendents, assistant superintendents, superintendents of building and grounds, business administrators, business superintendents, et cetera, talking about security. And we were recognized by the Commissioner of Emergency Services of the county for being a school district ahead of the curve in many of these issues. In particular, if anyone wanted to know about how to deal with swatting calls coming into the school district that are not nefarious in nature, please call Middletown. In addition to that, I'm going to leave nameless a local law enforcement high executive indicating that we are in a much better shape than many of the school districts in this county. So I only reiterate what I mentioned earlier. Building upon those successes, we will always look forward and not stay stagnant, because they really, if you think about it, being stagnant means you're moving backwards, and we don't want to do that. We have room to improvement. We will continue to do that, evaluate all our programs, but children are safe in our school district. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Del Moro.